Hey everyone, welcome to 10 Movies, where every season we focus on one actor through 10 of their most iconic films. This season, we've decided to dive into the work of Harrison Ford, actor, icon, and arguably the most handsome man to wear a fedora. I'm Hemal Javeri, and with me is my wonderful co-host and friend, Brian Minter.
Hello, Hemal. I am so excited to be starting a new season of the 10 Movies podcast with the iconic, beloved, adventure-packed movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981 action-adventure film directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Lawrence Kasdan, based on a story by George Lucas.
Amazing.
Amazing.
The Star Wars Dream Team is back, baby.
Did they hit it out of the park?
Let's get into it.
Yes, let's get into it. Brian, should I run down the plot of the film?
Yes, what is this? Nothing so quotidian as the plot, my friend. What is the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I don't know if I can sum up the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It's so adventuresome.
Is it adventuresome?
It's probably the most adventuresome film of all time. Are you kidding? There's poisonous snakes, and there's traps and clues, and there's fights, and there's car chases in there, and horses in there, and they're in secret tombs, multiple secret tombs. There's a hidden Nazi submarine island. What are you, crazy? Of course it's adventuresome.
There's lots of Nazis. The plot, we open up on a mild-mannered archeologist.
Oh,
we
sorry.
think.
It's too early for that.
Anyway, yeah, Harrison Ford is iconic Indiana Jones archaeologist whose entire life mission, by the way, just seems to be plundering artifacts from other cultures. Like, we'll get into that later. But he's retrieving artifacts, and he wants... Okay, look, I'm going to try to explain the plot, but
white people were the main characters in 1936. You can't fault Indiana Jones for stealing the cultural treasures of other people.
Of course.
They weren't appreciating them.
That's what they all did. Even though there were lots of warnings as to, like, you should not take this because it belongs to us.
Now, what were we?
We were talking about the plot of the film, and I'd like to talk about it because it's basically the MacGuffin, right? Like, this is all just a thing that he's doing, which sets the plot in action.
Yeah, well, there's two MacGuffins, right? So, it's the eve of World War II, or the eve of the U.S. entering into World War II. The Nazis are trouble. The Nazis are trying to find the lost Ark of the Covenant, which will be some sort of religious super weapon.
So, yeah, it's super weird. The Ark it carried the broken pieces of the 10 Commandments that Moses brought down from the mountain. But if you open it, it basically annihilates the entire world.
Well, you can use it to destroy your enemies, I suppose.
Well, I'm not going to skip to the end, but, like, he's operating under the assumption that if you actually open up the Ark, it will, destroy everything.
Yeah, which may be a narrative conceit of the filmmakers. I don't know that the actual biblical Ark of the Covenant was used to destroy Nazis.
And they don't actually say why the Ark would react that way. Anyway, the plot is this, and then, again, okay, so I don't want to jump too far ahead into it, but somebody tells Indy that the Nazis are after this. If they get this thing, it will be devastating. You have to get it first. He goes after it. A bunch of random stuff happens.
Well, he's got to find, there's a clue. There's the first MacGuffin, which is this medallion that will show you how to find the resting place of the Ark of the Covenant. So they have to go all over the world chasing the medallion, and the Nazis are after it, and his ex-girlfriend's got it. And
he only goes to Nepal to get the medallion, and then when he has the medallion, they go to Egypt, and then he goes like 8 feet into the desert, and he sees actually that they are digging in the wrong place. And then rather than saying, you know what, never mind, I'm just going to let them dig in the wrong place, he moves 10 feet down the road and starts digging in the right place for no good reason.
Yeah, so in a bit that I truly loved, the medallion tells you, how high to make the staff to use in the diorama that tells you where the thing is. And the Nazis don't have the medallion. They just have the first half because one of the evil Nazis had it burned into his hand. So the Nazis have the information and all is lost, but then they get a little old Egyptian man to translate it, and on the front half he says that the staff must be 6 qadams high, but then on the back, which the Nazis don't have, you must take back 1 qadam for the Jewish god whose staff this is. So then Salah and Indiana Jones say, they're digging in the wrong place. But to your point, why did they not just wait a couple days till the Nazis were gone?
Yeah, whatever. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the movie, and
we're butchering it, by the way. We're just leaping around talking about stuff.
Anyway, the plot is
everybody knows
Jones
the story, right?
Looks for a relic. He ends up finding it. There's multiple chase scenes with the Nazis, and in the end, the Nazis actually succeed in opening up the Ark.
But it melts their faces.
And it melts their faces off in truly one of the best special effects sequences. I don't think I've seen anything this good ever.
Well, for its time, I'm sure that was state of the art.
It holds up. It holds up. Even today, I was like, oh yeah, that's incredible. Good for them.
It reminded me of Ghostbusters, right? There's all these sort of ghosts flying around, and then two of their faces melt, but one of their heads explode.
Yeah.
Was he worse, or was he... Which is the worst fate? Your face to melt or your head to explode?
I think the face melting.
Yeah, I think that's worse.
Yeah, I think that's worse.
So the Frenchman's head exploded. Yeah. Maybe he was not as terrible as the Nazis.
Let me ask you this question. Did you like this film?
I love this film. I've seen it. I always watch the movie again for our podcast. Yeah. I didn't even need to because I've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark easily 20 times.
Okay. I understand that Raiders is one of those movies. It's iconic. A lot of people come to it with tons of baggage because they have seen it their entire childhoods, right? Especially if you are of a certain age.
Foundational text.
You grew up with it. You grew up with Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones with the fedora and the whip and and the leather jacket in the middle of the desert for no good reason. You got all of it. I watched it again. I'm familiar with it. I've seen it. I've seen all the movies. Extremely tiresome. I found it extremely...
Oh, tiresome you found it?
Extremely tiresome.
Huh. Why? How could you find it tiresome? Every 10 minutes there's a new crazy thing they have to do.
There's a new crazy thing they have to do. I don't know. And, I'm not saying this to be, contrarian, but I do think part of it is Indiana Jones. I do think part of it is the character of Indiana Jones.
He's too Boy Scoutish for you?
No, I think he's...
Too taciturn, too rugged, too craggedly good-looking?
Too craggedly good-looking. No, we may have to get into this a little bit later, but he's not... I will say this, sometimes he's kind of a dick, and he's competent, but he's not competent enough. There was something, actually, that I found, not off-putting about Indiana Jones, but very annoying. Indy is, the worst dude you've ever dated. And I was just I was watching this, and I'm yeah, this guy's a
I believe the character of Marion Ravenwood is rather scarred by her experience.
Yeah, and I was just watching the whole thing, and I was yeah, he's just the worst dude you've ever dated. He's hot, and he's competent, and he's handsome, and all this other stuff, but...
no, you said he...
all the way around.
So I do find when I'm watching a movie for our podcast, I know I'm going to talk about it with you the next week or later that week, I watch it differently. I watch it more analytically. Yeah. So I've watched this movie so many times, and yeah, I love it. But I definitely a lot of it. Really, I was uncomfortable about what a lot of it said about
there's some real uncomfortable.
Yeah, the Orientalism and imperialism, which not that I had never noticed before, but I was really paying attention to it, and I was this feels like it was actually made in 1936, even though it was made in 1981.
Yeah, let's get back to it, but first let's run through the cast. Let's talk about the cast. We'll save Harrison Ford for the end.
Right. Who are the major actors portraying characters in the film?
We have Karen Allen as Marion Ravenwood, his ex-girlfriend / daughter of one of his college professors.
Now, how did you feel about Karen Allen as Marion Ravenwood?
I thought she was delightful, and I thought she was charming. She's just a gorgeous, fun presence on the screen, and I wonder what else she did.
She was in Scrooge. Remember, she's the girlfriend in Scrooge. She was in Starman. But I think her character was written. I think she had an uphill fight. Yeah. I think her character is absolutely written just as a damsel in distress, right? She's only there to say, Indy, save me. Yeah. But I think she manages to infuse this character. She's kind of dysfunctional for good reason. She's had a troubled life. She's such a survivor. She's got so much grit and presence. And in the other Indiana Jones movies, there are female leads who are really they're just there to be pretty and get saved, which I think is what this character was there to do. But somehow she manages to to elevate that character quite a bit.
And I get in 1981 to have, even though she's given very little to actually do aside from get saved, literally.
She gets saved 30 times.
She gets saved 18 times throughout this movie. But she even in 1981, she's hard drinking, mostly dysfunctional, doesn't have a stable life, and is very like sure of her own presence. Like I feel like that's all Karen Allen bringing it into the character.
Yeah, apparently the character had a very damaging relationship with a much older man, Indiana Jones, who she still hates 10 years later. Her father took her apparently to Nepal and died, and now she runs a bar at the top of the world.
Yeah.
The drinking, though, is clearly in the script, and it is implied multiple times that she can outdrink anyone, which is kind of an interesting twist for a woman character in 1981.
Yeah, like I think that they did some good things with her character. As much as the script fails her, Karen Allen does not fail the character.
Yes, amen to that.
Like she does a great job, and she's delightful.
Now I want to talk when later in our segment, what does the movie have to say? I want to talk more about the character of Salah, played by John Rhys Davies, because I think the profound Orientalism of the movie is very strongly located in the portrayal of Salah.
Yeah.
But just talking about John Rhys Davies' performance here, he's so lovable. He's just like affable, and he's jovial, and he's decent, but he's like adventuresome. He's loyal.
Yeah.
People love this character. He's a fan favorite.
I'm glad he's a fan favorite. I am not really big into sci-fi or fantasy. I didn't really grow up with this mythology, but I think he was such a good comforting presence on screen. Like, and you need that with like all of the chaos that's happening. You need a good sidekick, and he is a great sidekick.
He's a great sidekick. Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
a great sidekick. He's there for his dude. He gets him out safely. I love him.
The only other, I feel like, major character of note who was not Indiana Jones is Paul Freeman as Belloc, the evil French archaeologist, Indiana Jones's nemesis.
I thought he was fine, but entirely forgettable as a villain.
You didn't like him as a villain?
No,
I liked him.
I mean, I thought he was fine aside from being cartoonish, but the entire film is kind of cartoonish.
Yeah. Well, I think so. Belloc is the French villain, and yeah, he is evil. But like, I feel like he has some. There's a great scene with him and Marion where they're drinking. He's very he's an asshole, but he's very urbane. He's very self-regarding. He's at least a mildly two-dimensional character. And I think that the Nazis in this movie, they're basically orcs.
It doesn't matter who they are.
Every single Nazi is the worst human being on Earth.
Yeah.
And I'm not pro-Nazi, of course. You got to figure that your average Nazi infantryman, wasn't really a monster. But yeah, every Nazi is so awful. And I think like the fact that they made the one Nazi villain a little bit more of a person really throws the Nazis into sharp relief. How terrible! Every Nazi is ready to pull the arms off a baby and laugh about it at a drop of a hat.
Yeah, I mean, it's the entire movie is over the top, right? Like, there's not just a couple of snakes, there's an entire pit full of snakes, right? That's what makes it so good. And then
it's weird that thousands and thousands of snakes are thriving in a sealed tomb that hasn't been opened for hundreds of years.
Listen, it's all weird and super.
What do they eat down there?
Let's not get hung up on.
Are there any other major figures in the cast, or shall we move on to the subject of our podcast, Mr. Harrison Ford?
I don't think there are. I think Karen Allen and really Harrison Ford carry the whole film.
Yes, agreed.
I would like to talk about Harrison Ford. I'd like to talk about why did we pick Harrison Ford for this season?
Well, there's a mercenary superficial reason, which is that we have learned through our time podcasting that people want to listen to podcast episodes about movies they've heard of. We did some Jennifer Lopez podcast episodes once upon a time, and no one had heard of any of the movies, and they did
great movies though.
No terrible movies, if you will recall.
Some good ones.
But anyway, so there was a crass mercenary reason for choosing Harrison Ford. There's the new Indiana Jones coming out, or Indiana Jones in the retirement home. But as I was watching, may I tell you this? As I was watching Raiders of the Lost Ark,
tell me this. Yes, go ahead.
I was thinking. So I'm paying attention to Harrison Ford in a way I normally wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
And I love Harrison Ford. I've seen all these Harrison Ford movies. I've been watching his movies my whole life. Everybody loves Harrison Ford, but I'm watching him and I'm like, why? And not that I think people are wrong, because he affects me as well, but I don't really know what it is. He's a bit of a cipher.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think that is a cipher for us to try to crack. I think that's the right word, to crack a cipher, right?
I think you can crack a cipher.
I think you can crack a cipher, yes.
Decrypted, perhaps?
Yes, I would frame our crassness as more of Harrison Ford. He seems primed for unraveling, right? He seems primed for this.
That's way better than what I said, yes.
It is primed for this unraveling of what is his popularity and how has it extended for as long as he has? Because the way I think about it is that his career may have had lulls, but he's always been Harrison Ford.
He's always been, exactly.
He's always been
a movie star. He's been in some of the biggest movie franchises of all time.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to seem to like doing press. He's very cranky and curmudgeonly off camera. and yet people are so drawn to this guy in his movies.
Yeah, and he makes very good movies, I have to say.
But now, did you enjoy his performance as Indiana Jones?
No, okay, so it's not that I didn't enjoy his performance as Indiana Jones. I've thought a lot about like why it was so annoying to watch this movie, and part of it is the character of Indiana Jones.
Right.
Is like this, like I just said before, like your worst boyfriend, maddeningly cocky, will actually not sit and listen to reason, ambitious about things.
He's a man of action.
Exactly, with this like one-track mind of like, I must pillage artifacts from developing nations. Like all of that stuff.
To pillage the artifacts.
I think all of that stuff did not, but I will say the one thing that really like creeped me out about this probably was that, you know, Karen Allen was like, I was really young when we dated. And I was like, God, yeah, she must have been like 17 when they went out. And that's
well, how old do you think she was? In her like mid-20s, you think? Late 20s?
I don't know.
She did say it had been 10 years.
It had been 10 years. Anyway.
Well, he was young too. Those were different times. They're adventuring around the world.
So let's get back to Harrison Ford. What do you, what kind of stuff do you associate with him? Because I have a list.
Yeah, let me hear your list.
I was going to save one of them for last. So I think we always have to talk about Harrison Ford's hair. Like that's just our thing. And I feel like hair is a thing that's underrated quite a bit.
I don't think I really notice his hair. Like his hat is so iconic.
His hat is always there.
Even just the silhouette of this character, you instantly get that's Indiana Jones and he's having an adventure.
It's the most famous fedora in the world, right?
It's his whole outfit.
His whole outfit. Look, we've got, is he an anti-hero? Does he have charm?
Mm-hmm.
I say that he's kind of a dick.
Now, do you think Harrison Ford tends to play dickish characters? That's your...
I'm going with that based on two of his like most iconic characters. Yes.
So Indiana Jones...
Yes.
Is he dickish?
Yes, he's a dick. He alienated this woman apparently and scarred her for life, so that makes him kind of a dick.
Well, we don't know. We only know her side of the story. We don't know what he thought about it.
Her side of the story, yeah. And also,
maybe he was just maybe he thought it was just like a light fling.
No. And there are other portions. Like there's actually one where, you know, that famous scene where the guy comes like waving it's not a katana, but like the sword, right? Comes waving.
Oh yeah, the guy's like, he's got a big scimitar, he's gonna fight him.
I'm gonna do it. And then like Indy like pulls out his gun and just shoots
guns him down.
And he doesn't even think about it. I'm like, that guy.
People love that scene.
I know people love that scene.
But it is dickish to just kill a man who wanted to have a sword fight.
He was just like, I think that he tends to star in dad movies that dads love.
Oh, dads love Indiana Jones movies.
Dads love Indiana Jones.
Let's just sit down and watch a bunch of them for Father's Day.
And then I will say my thesis here for this Harrison Fordness of the film is that moms love him and dads want to be him.
Yeah, dads want to like swing a bullwhip and fight a Nazi and rescue the gal and ride off on a horse.
And moms, and I'm going to say very strictly, it's moms. Like moms are attracted to this weird kind of daredevilness, but within very safe boundaries. And Harrison Ford tends to play those characters.
Yeah, because I think, you know, and you mentioned before that like he's competent, but he's maybe not competent enough. One thing that I think, and maybe that's not unique to this movie, but like our modern day action adventure sort of movies, I find incredibly tiresome because like your Dwayne Johnson movies and your Fast and the Furiouses and your Jason Statham movies and Liam Neeson's daughter's always getting taken. In all those movies, the hero is relentlessly capable, right? Like he's invulnerable and he always makes the right decision and he can kill anybody and physical violence is always the right solution and he's great at it. And that's so boring. Indiana Jones, though, he gets his ass kicked, he gets hurt, he fumbles, and he's constantly looking like uncertain and befuddled.
Yeah, he looks befuddled all the time.
Because
he just can't understand what's happening to him.
But you wouldn't either, right? Like if you were actually being chased by Nazis and there was like an evil monkey trying to poison you and your girlfriend was stuck in a big jar and you're trying to find your friend, you'd be befuddled too. So I like that
constantly like, what?
But I think that's what makes him a great action hero because anyone you're like, oh my God, they're gonna hurt it, something bad's gonna happen. But like You never think that of The Rock.
Right.
You know The Rock is going to, like, a tank's going to bonk off his head and he's going to just, like, grin and break it.
Right. He does. I don't know if this is a classification of Harrison Ford or a classification of, like, how we used to make action movies, but he seems very human. Like, it's not John Wick where he gets thrown down the stairs a million times and we know he's going to live. Like, one wrong, like, sword swing is might be the end of it.
I think that was the action. I think, Die Hard comes to mind as a similar kind of thing where, like, the hero is tough and he's capable, but you're kind of frightened for the peril he's in, as is he.
And I think we have to remember that he is supposed to be an archaeologist, right? Like, he may be capable of these things, but he's not, like, a martial arts street fighter.
But I find that so much more satisfying than the modern action idiom where like, you can only appreciate modern action movies aesthetically, right? You're like, no one's going to get hurt. They're going to beat the bad guy. You're just watching how they film it, right? But with Indiana Jones, there's every chance he's not, like, things go wrong all the time for this guy, and he has to, like, come up with a new plan.
Yeah, and I think part of my annoyance is not the competency, but is that he is kind of he makes some bad decisions for sure. Like, I don't know if we're ready to move on, but I do want to talk about the major plot hole in this film, which I think has been all over the internet for a while.
Oh, well, I'm ready to move on. Although I will say, like, on the dickishness, like, I think the character,
she hasn't seen this man in 10 years.
She socks him in the jaw.
You knew what you were getting into. Like, what the fuck,
well, she punched him in the face.
So what?
Well, if I saw an ex-girlfriend and she socked me in the nose, I would be defensive.
You knew it. Like, there's no, I don't know how young she was, what is happening here?
So,
anyway.
Well, he's a bit roguish, right? Like, I don't think Indiana Jones is an anti-hero per se.
He's not an anti-hero.
But yeah, we do get the sense that he's a good guy, but he's not Boy Scoutish necessarily, right? Like, he mistreated Ray, and he's not even that nice to Mary, right? Originally, he's not
very nice to her.
Well, she's a little dysfunctional, quite frankly. No. Like, at one point, she's tied up by the Nazis, and the 14th time she gets captured, and he stumbles across her, and she's like, "Oh my God, rescue me!" And he's like, "Oh, I totally am going to rescue you, but you are not my priority."
But first, let me go get
first
that
I have
arc.
to go do this other thing.
This is like, oh my God, I know I'm like unpacking years of bad relationships here, but it is literally every dude I've ever dated who's like, yes, but I'm going to go see this band at the 9:30 club.
I totally want to hang out with you, but my actual priority is this other thing. And even in the beginning, when the government guys come to put him on the trail of the Ark, they don't even try to appeal to patriotism. They don't say, like, you've got to do this or Hitler will get it. They're like, he's motivated by money and glory, right? They're like, hey, you love all this, like, relic hunting bullshit. This is the biggest relic of all time. That's what gets him to go. Like, he's not a heroic character in that sense, which I think is part of his appeal.
I think that's interesting. I think that's a really good character choice, right? Like, I think all of that makes for a really good character because he doesn't really seem to give a shit about the Nazis and the end of the world and all that stuff.
Yeah, the Nazis are like an obstacle to him.
Yeah, they're just an obstacle because all he cares about is this artifact. And I agree, like, that's part of the Indian.
But not all he cares about, right? Because when he's up against the wall, which he constantly is, he will, like, in fact, at the very end, he's willing to destroy the Ark to save Marion, right? Like, when he's up against the wall and he's in a desperate strait, which the movie constantly puts him.
He gets captured instead because he can't bring himself to destroy the Ark.
Oh, but that's, like, I think that, like, again, he's not just, like, blandly virtuous. Like, he's got some push and pull. Yeah, he's got some flaws. Flawed hero.
I think you've kind of convinced me. Like, yes, I didn't like the character, but he has a little bit more depth now for sure.
All right. Well, Hemal, what does the movie have to say? Whether they're trying to say it or they're saying it inadvertently. What about this film?
How much time do we have?
Well, one thing that's interesting, this movie was made in 1981 and is depicting the events of 1936.
Okay, so it is 1936.
So
right before World War II.
Yeah. So when it came out, it was like, oh, this is some stuff that happened. This is historical stuff. But interestingly, we are about as far from when this movie was released as the time frame as it was from the time frame it was depicting, right? This movie was showing what happened about 40 years ago, and this movie is about 40 years old.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed. So there's two epochs here, and a lot has changed.
I think we need to address we've talked about it a little bit, but we need to address the rampant imperialism in the film. Orientalism. Jonathan Rhys-Davies playing Salah. Not great, guys. Not great.
Well, I think this is a classic Orientalist piece of fiction, right? Like, the Nepal and Egypt, these are the backdrops for the struggles and conflicts of Westerners, right? And like Cairo was like a major world city even in 1936,
right? And
but like it's got like monkeys and like people fighting with swords.
There's no, I mean, yes, of course, when we view it through this lens, like the imperialism and the racism, like all of that is
one-eyed assassins and spice merchants, and
yeah, like there's no actual
very exotified
depth to the characters, like you said. It's extremely exotified. Othering, quite honestly. I mean, I guess it's a good thing that the Egyptians aren't the enemies and it's the Nazis.
Well, the Egyptians don't. They're flattened, right? They're just like they're the backdrop.
Yeah, and they're
the Americans
also
versus the Nazis.
Like there's one of the action set pieces, right? Like they are the assassins that just come in and try to kill them. So like, yeah, there is a lot that's actually wrong with this film, but to a degree, like it's so cartoonish. I'm not going to say that it doesn't matter, but it feels very much like of the time. And it's not as bad as Temple of Doom. Temple of Doom is like offensive.
Yeah, well, this is one of those movies that like it's so studied and loved that they're like the lore about the production and the writing. There's millions and millions of things about it. And one I think that a lot of people know is that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, who's of the same age, like they watch these Saturday morning matinee serials, right? You go to watch the movie, and before it, there's like a 15-minute thing where like the Lost City of Gold and all that stuff from the 40s and 50s. This incredibly this time of incredible imperialism, right? And the Orientalism informs that, right? If the people who live in these other places aren't quite people, then it's fine for the Americans to come and take whatever they want.
No, I mean, but it's so funny when you look at it now. It's very easy to view Indy as the bad guy, right? Like you can very clearly make a case for this reading of like Indiana Jones as the bad guy in this film. Like, and this gets to the plot hole that I'm talking about in the sense that like he was terrible to women. He's a womanizer. He has no regard for the country that he's in. He doesn't speak the language, doesn't give a shit about any of it, doesn't care about the people. He's only there to grab their valuable shit and take it back to his precious museum in America. That's all he cares about.
Yeah, and the movie actually makes that like a positive thing, right? He's like, the Nazis want to use it as a weapon, but he wants to put it in a museum.
Yeah.
But he wants to put it in a museum in the United States, where he thinks it ought to go.
Right, like there's a case to be made for reading this movie as he is the villain here because he wants to do these things. And then also when you think about the plot hole, which is that if Indy had just left the Nazis alone, they would have
melted Hitler's face.
Yeah, it would have just melted Hitler's face, or they would never have found the Ark to begin with because they were just digging in the wrong place. And they didn't actually know that they were digging in the wrong place until you see Indy like actually start digging in the right place.
They had so many of these poor Egyptian guys digging out there.
Yeah.
I gotta feel like they eventually would have just excavated the whole site and found, like, the Ark was only 20 yards from where they were looking.
It's so weird. Like, it's like right next door. And
so I feel like they might have found the Ark. But yes, had Indiana Jones not intervened, they would have just taken it back, opened it for Hitler, and his face would have melted.
Everything actually would have worked out better if Indy had, like, not gotten involved like a big, dumb white American. Is like, this is my job, and I gotta solve it.
He didn't know that at the time, Hemal. So we mentioned the character of Sala earlier.
Yes.
And I think so there's one, the question is like, is Indiana Jones racist? Like the straightforward answer is yes, it absolutely is.
Absolutely.
Move on to a hard question. But I think, a lot of people I think would hear that as like, what? No, it's a fun movie and why you have to over-examine and George Lucas' wife is black. It can't be racist. But I think like this movie, I'm not saying I think that. I'm saying you hear a lot of discourse.
I get it.
So this movie, we got the character of Sala, right?
Yes.
So Sala is written by he's an Egyptian man, the character, but he's written by white dudes, conceived of by white dudes, portrayed by a white dude. John Rhys Davies is Welsh.
Yeah.
So that's terrible, right? And I don't think that would happen today. But on the other hand, and I don't say this as exculpatory, I say this to point to contradictions of it, Sala is a character who you're supposed to really like root for him and think highly of him. Like he's a very decent character. He's a family man. Like we get a lot of scenes with his family and his kids. Him and Indy have, they have this, the movie doesn't explain, which is fine. They have this friendship and history. Yeah. But like Indiana's he's comfortable in his house. His kids seem to really love him. There's this like genuine cross-cultural relationship.
Yeah.
So, and I can imagine George Lucas and Steven Spielberg probably thought they were being racially progressive by the way they constructed this character.
Right.
And then went out and hired a white guy to play him because you can't hire an Egyptian.
I mean, I understand that, but one, I don't think, like, to a degree, intentions don't really matter. And I'm not trying to apply a retroactive lens to this because times were different, though I feel like maybe you could have found an Egyptian actor to play Salah.
Oh, yeah. Or in the Nepal scenes when it's clearly white guys.
It's all clearly white guys with, like, makeup.
1981, they didn't have to do that.
No, they didn't have to do that. Whatever. Like, the movie does have its faults. Like, is Indy racist? Yeah, I'm sorry, dudes. He's extremely racist. Like, that kind of imperialism is wrong, and it has been wrong. And I think it says more about the culture and this, like, the varied history of, like, colonial imperialism, like, across generations, that it was, like, vaulted, right? Like, this is a great thing
this is what you do. This is adventure, yeah.
This is adventure. Like, I think out of anything, I think that is probably the most destructive legacy of Indiana Jones is holding this kind of, like, historical erasure of, like, indigenous cultures as a point of pride for what, like, good Americans do or good Westerners do. That's probably, unfortunately, I'm sorry, George, I'm sorry, Stephen, like, that is what, that's the bad side of the legacy of these films.
Yeah, and I certainly don't think that the Indiana Jones movies were the cause of any of that. I think they reflected...
No. I don't think they're the cause.
But yeah, they're extremely popular, right? Like,
yeah.
If you grew up watching these movies, and Indiana Jones is clearly the hero, and the things he's doing are heroic, like, I don't think he should have taken the Ark of the Covenant or the golden monkey head at the beginning.
Like, they clearly don't want you there, Indy. There's tons of booby traps. Anyway,
the Ark, you could at least argue that, like, there's some exigent circumstances for plundering it. But the golden monkey head was just sitting in a cave being sacred.
Not hurting anybody.
He's
like, you know what? I gotta have that for the museum.
And then he's so much better than Belloc. Belloc's like, I want the golden monkey head. And he's like, no, you're awful. Yeah. I'm taking the golden monkey head.
I'm like, yeah, he's French, but aside from that, he's kind of the same. Can we talk about the MVP of the movie?
Yes. Who did you think was the most valuable player who was not Harrison Ford?
Karen Allen.
Yeah, that's strong choice.
Karen Allen, just a delightful presence on screen. She did so much work here to make this a great, rounded character. And I don't think she gets enough credit for kind of the comedy that she brings to the role.
Yes, yeah, she's got a comic sensibility that Harrison Ford does not have.
Yeah, she has this great comic sensibility. Like, the drinking scene with her and Belloc, like, you can tell that it's kind of going to go... You can tell that it's going in the direction it's going to go in, where she's going to try to escape. But she just, like... She does such a great job with so little. And also, like, a perfect little face. I just loved her.
She's in the tent with Belloc, and he's got a real thing for her, so he keeps, like... half-heartedly rescuing her from the Nazis because she needs to be rescued all the time. So she wants to escape this tent because Indiana Jones won't set her free because he's busy. And like there's this, they get drunk, and of course we know that she can hold her liquor, so she just gets him drunk. And then she's sort of snabbed a knife because she's going to escape later. She pulls the knife out. It was more like a steak knife. It seems sharp. And Belloc laughs at her, right? Like, and it would be easy to like read or play that scene as like, "Ha, you stupid woman, you can't escape." So she hears his laugh. She laughs back and very like, yeah, that is funny, but you can see in her face she is still definitely getting out of here. So again, I think not even like the dialogue or the story, I think she's managing to bring something to that character that is not necessarily there.
And I think, again, it's the comic timing, it's her body language, it's the way she inhabits the role. She's a great foil for him, and I hope that they're bringing her back for the new one.
So they brought her back for the fourth one, which was not a good movie.
Oh, I don't
and they're bringing her, the fourth one was terrible. The Crystal Skull. So I think they were bringing her back for the new one. Because again, I think people love that character because she's more than just a damsel in distress.
Yeah.
I think she was terrific. I would say John Rhys Davies because I really loved that performance, but I don't want to condone imperialism and Orientalism.
You say the monkey?
So I'll say the monkey. Yeah, there's a great little monkey who he works for an evil one-eyed assassin who worked for the Nazis. He befriends Indiana. He's very resourceful, the monkey. He befriends Indiana Jones in order to like mislead. And then he tells the Nazis where Marion's hiding. And then at the end, another Nazi comes and poisons all the dates. And Salah saves Indiana by grabbing the dates. He realizes it's poison. And he realizes because the monkey ate it, the monkey died. And that monkey did a lot of plot and story work in his time on screen.
That was a really good monkey. Yeah.
He's cute, but he's also a villain. He's like a adorable bad monkey.
He's a double agent.
Yeah, he's a double agent. He's working for the one-eyed assassin who's working for the Nazis, and they never realize it. They think he's a cute monkey the whole time. And then they're sad when he died, even though it was good for them that he died.
A plus pick. I love this pick.
All right, well, I think we said all that we can say about the film Raiders of the Lost Ark. I found it adventuresome. You found it tiresome. We agree that it has a complex and problematic legacy.
I agree with that. I think that in terms of where this fits into the canon of Harrison Ford movies, I think it's like right up there at the top. This is it's a duel to the end for his most iconic role. Is his most or Han Solo?
Yeah, I was going to say, which do you think it is? Is it Han Solo or Indiana Jones?
Oh my God! Honestly, just because the Star Wars people are so bananas.
They're the worst. At least the Indiana Jones people aren't the worst.
Yeah, Indiana Jones people are just like dudes who like to golf. So I will say that it's probably the second most iconic role.
Well, let's when we watch Empire Strikes Back, which I believe is scheduled for later in the season, let's revisit this question and decide which is the more iconic role. But yeah, certainly if it's not the most iconic, it's right behind it.
It's right up there. Well, thank you all very much for listening.
Yes, welcome back to this new and exciting Harrison Ford-focused season of the 10 Movies Podcast. Please subscribe. Please like us on the podcast listening application of your choice. And if all goes well, you may even see us on YouTube, where we appreciate you doing whatever people do on YouTube to signal approval.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.